Hi everyone! Are you ready for chapter 7? I don't have the story map up because I have a fun activity that we are going to do at the end of this chapter instead. So, quick recap chapter 6, sailboat race. Some crazy stuff went down. There was a big tidal wave because the policeman fell into the pond, and then the two sailboats got tangled together with this brown paper bag. But in the end, Stuart won the race. And he made a new friend, Dr. Carey, the dentist. I wonder if we'll be seeing him again. Well, chapter 7 is titled Margalo. Let's find out what that means. Because he was so small, Stuart was often hard to find around the house. His father and his mother and his brother George seldom could locate him by looking for him. Usually they had to call for him, and the house often echoed with cries of, "Stuart! Stuart!" You would come into a room and he might be curled up in a chair, but you wouldn't see him. Mr. Little was in constant fear of losing him and never finding him again. He even made him wear a tiny red hat, like hunters wear, so that he would be easier to see. One day when he was 7 years old, Stuart was in the kitchen watching his mother make tapioca pudding. Do any of you like tapioca pudding? He was feeling hungry, and when Mrs. Little opened the door of the refrigerator to get something, Stuart slipped inside to see if he could find a piece of cheese. He thought, of course, his mother had seen him, and when the door swung shut and he realized he was locked in, he was surprised. "Help!" he called. "It's dark in here! It's cold in this refrigerator! Help! Let me out!" But his voice was not strong enough to get through the thick wall. In the darkness, he stumbled and fell into a saucer of prunes. The juice was cold. Stuart shivered, and his teeth clattered together. It wasn't until half an hour later that Mrs. Little again opened the door and found him standing on a butter plate, beating his arms together, trying to keep warm, and blowing on his hands, and hopping up and down. "Mercy!" she cried. "Stuart, my poor little boy!" "How about a nip of brandy?" said Stuart. "I'm chilled to the bone." So, brandy is a type of alcohol. So, pretty sure his mom's going to say, nah. His mother made him some hot broth instead and put him to bed in his cigarette box with a doll's hot water bottle against his feet. Even so, Stuart caught a bad cold, and then this turned into bronchitis, and Stuart had to stay in bed for almost 2 weeks. Oh man, there's a picture of his bed. He's all curled up in there. Oh man, now he's got bronchitis. Oof. During his illness, the other members of the family were very kind to Stuart. Mrs. Little played tic-tac-toe, George made him a bow and arrow, and Mr. Little made him a pair of ice skates out of two paper clips. One cold afternoon, Mrs. Little was shaking her dust cloth out the window when she noticed a small bird lying on the windowsill, apparently dead. She brought it in and put it near the radiator, and in a short while it fluttered its wings and opened its eyes. It was a pretty little hen bird, brown with a streak of yellow. The little squeaked on what kind of bird she was. "She's a wall-eyed vireo," said George scientifically. "I think she's more like a young wren," said Mr. Little. Well, anyway, they fixed her a place in the living room, fed her, and gave her some water. Soon she felt much better and went hopping around the house, examining everything with the greatest care and interest. Soon she hopped upstairs and into Stuart's room where he was lying in bed. So they have a mouse that lives in their house right now, right? And now they've taken in a bird. "Hello," said Stuart. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" "My name is Margalo," said the bird softly in a musical voice. "Oh! The title of this chapter is Margalo. That's her name. We're being introduced to a new character. I come from fields once tall with wheat, from pastures deep in fern and thistle. I come from vales of meadow sweet, and I love to whistle." There's got a little rhyming in there. Stuart sat upright in his bed. "Say that again," he said. "I can't," replied Margalo. "I have a sore throat." "So have I," said Stuart. "I've got bronchitis. You better not get too near me. You might catch it." I'll stay right here by the door, said Margalo. You can use some of my gargle if you want to, said Stuart. Probably like salt water. It's good if you have a sore throat to kind of gargle it. And here are some nose drops, and I have plenty of Kleenex. Thank you very much. You are very kind, replied the bird. Did they take your temperature? Asked Stuart, who was beginning to be genuinely worried about his new friend's health. No, said Margalo, but I don't think it will be necessary. Well, we better make sure, said Stuart, because I would hate to have anything happen to you. Here, and he tossed her the thermometer. Margalo put it under her tongue, and she and Stuart sat very still for 3 minutes, and then she took it out and looked at it, turning it slowly and carefully. Normal, she announced. Here's a picture of Margalo taking her temperature and Stuart in bed. Oh, Stuart felt his heart leap for gladness. She has a normal temperature. It seemed to him that he had never seen any creature so beautiful as this tiny bird, and he already loved her. Oh my goodness, Stuart's in love with a bird named Margalo. I hope, he remarked, that my parents have fixed you up with a decent place to sleep. Oh, yes, Margalo replied. I'm going to sleep in the Boston Fern on the bookshelf in the living room. It's a nice place for a city location. And now, if you'll excuse me, I think I shall go to bed. I see it's getting dark outside, and I always go to bed at sundown. Good night, sir. Oh, please don't call me sir, cried Stuart. Call me Stuart. Very well, said the bird. Good night, Stuart. And she hopped off with light bouncing steps. Good night, Margalo, called Stuart. See you in the morning. So now we have a new character, Margalo, and she's going to sleep in the Boston Fern in the living room. A Boston Fern is a type of plant. So she's just going to get like all nestled up in this plant and sleep in the living room. And Stuart's in love. That's a mighty fine bird, Stuart whispered to himself. When Mrs. Little came in later to tuck Stuart in for the night, he asked her if she thought the bird would be quite safe sleeping down in the living room. Quite safe, my dear, replied Mrs. Little. What about the cat Snowbell? Asked Stuart. Snowbell won't touch the bird, his mother said. You go to sleep and forget all about that. Mrs. Little opened the window and turned out the light. Stuart closed his eyes and laid in the dark, but couldn't seem to get to sleep. He tossed and turned. He just kept thinking about the bird downstairs, and he kept thinking about Snowbell, and about the way Snowbell's eyes gleamed. There's just something in me that doesn't trust a cat, he said. I can't sleep knowing Margalo might be in danger. So Stuart climbed out of bed, put on some slippers. He took his bow and arrow and his flashlight and tiptoed out into the hall. Everybody had gone to bed and the house was dark. Stuart found his way to the stairs and went slowly and cautiously into the living room, making no noise. His throat hurt him, and he did feel a little bit dizzy. Sick as I am, he said to himself, this has got to be done. Being careful not to make a sound, he went across to the lamp by the bookshelf, shimmied up the cord, and climbed out onto the shelf. There was a faint ray of light from the street lamp outside, and Stuart could kind of see Margalo asleep in the fern, her head tucked under her wing. Then he hid behind a candlestick and waited, listening and watching. For a half hour he saw nothing, heard nothing except the faint ruffle of Margalo's wings. The clock struck 10 loudly, and before the sound of the last stroke had died away, Stuart saw 2 gleaming yellow eyes peering out from behind the sofa. He was right. That's Snowbell. Do you remember we met him in an earlier chapter, and he made it look like Stuart went down that mouse hole, but he didn't? Yeah, Snowbell's kind of a troublemaker. The eyes came... sorry, I lost my spot. Here we go. So, thought Stuart, I guess there's going to be something doing after all. He reached for his bow and arrow. The eyes came nearer. Stuart was frightened, but he was a brave mouse, even when he had a sore throat. He placed the arrow against the cord of the bow and waited. Snowbell crept softly toward the bookshelf and climbed noiselessly into the chair within easy reach of the Boston Fern, where Margalo was asleep. All right, so Stuart's really good at moving quietly. Snowbell's really good at moving quietly. No one's making any noise. His eyes gleamed bright. Stuart decided the time had come. He stepped out from behind the candlestick, knelt down, bent his bow, and took careful aim at Snowbell's left ear. "This is the finest thing I have ever done," thought Stuart, and he shot the arrow straight into the cat's ear. Snowbell squealed with pain and jumped down and ran off toward the kitchen. "A direct hit," said Stuart. "Thank heaven. Well, there's a good night's work done." And he threw a kiss toward Margalo's sleeping form. It was a tired little mouse that crawled into bed a few minutes later, tired but ready for sleep at last. That, my friends, is the end of chapter 7. Oh, that Snowbell. I tell ya, he's no good. He's a sneaky cat. Oy. Well, that was very brave of Stuart to protect Margalo that way, and he was right. He couldn't sleep. He said, "Something's not right. I don't trust the cat. I don't think she's safe." And he went to go protect his friend, because Stuart is a good friend. Do you ever protect any of your friends? Or have any of your friends ever protected you? I know all of you have some really great friends. Well, I have a Venn diagram, okay? And on one side is Stuart, and the other side is Margalo. So we're going to fill out our Venn diagram together. And we have to decide what characteristics are just about Stuart, what's just about Margalo, and then things that they might have in common. So we'll try to do this kind of quickly. The first one I just picked up says, "Sleep in a fern." Sleep in a fern. Which character slept in a fern? Stuart or Margalo? It was Margalo. So we'll take our little piece of tape here and tape it in. I wish we could do this all together in person, but we'll make do. The next thing I have is lives in a house. Who lives in the house? Now, Margalo is kind of living in the house now, but when we first meet her, she mentions she lives somewhere else. So Stuart is the one who lives in the house. Stuart is the character that we would put in the house. Now, the next one I'm picking up is a whistle. Do you remember which character mentioned that they like to whistle? Think about the type of animals that they are. Stuart is a mouse, and Margalo is a bird. Which animal whistles? It's Margalo. Birds usually whistle. I hear lots of birds whistling outside my window these days. Do you? So we'll put it in the Margalo spot. Here we go. Here we go. Let's see. Aha. Oh, sore throat. Who has a sore throat? Well, we know Stuart is laying in bed because he's got bronchitis, so he has a sore throat. But then, do you remember in the story, Margalo, he asks her to repeat something, and she says, "I can't. I have a sore throat." So Margalo has a sore throat too. They both have sore throats. So that can go in our middle, in our little green section of our Venn diagram here. Uh-oh. Tape stuck to the wrong part of the paper. All right, so they both have a sore throat. Now, who has a bow and arrow? Which character has a bow and arrow, Margalo or Stuart? It's Stuart. And he uses that bow and arrow to protect Margalo, his new friend. This one says lives in a field. Okay, so we know Stuart lives in a house. So this one must be for Margalo. She lives in a field. Let me put it right there. Lives in a field. Now, one of them has feathers. Who has feathers? Again, let's think about the type of animals that they are. Stuart is a mouse. Margalo is a bird. What kind of animal has feathers? If you said Margalo the bird, you'd be right. Okay, we only have a couple more. Who has whiskers? Do birds have whiskers or do mice have whiskers? It's the mouse, Stuart. He has whiskers. Now, who sleeps in a matchbox? Right, a little cigarette box. That would be Stuart. Yes, because Margalo's sleeping in the fern in the plant. Remember? In the living room. There we go. This is looking nice and full. And I have one more for us to do here. This one says small. Who's small? They both are, right? They are both small. She is a small bird, and he is a mouse, and mice are small. So look at that. Got a nice little Venn diagram of our characters there. Can you see it? There we go. Great. Well, thank you for reading another chapter with me, and I'll be back again tomorrow for chapter 8. Bye.